The house key that broke me. You'd be amazed how much silence a single sentence can carry. Mine came wrapped in silver paper and a red ribbon. A bright spring afternoon. Everyone in the room was clapping, the kind of clapping that echoes, not because it's loud, but because it's so far from where you're standing. My brother, Caleb, had just unwrapped his college graduation gift. Inside the box? A house key. Not a symbolic one, a real one, custom cut, shiny. With a photo taped inside the lid, a 3-bedroom suburban home with a wraparound porch and a hot tub in the back. The room exploded in cheers. My mom was crying. My dad kept toasting. Caleb stood up, soaking in the applause like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. And me? I was by the salad table, in a dress from last year, trying not to choke on dry lettuce and a lifetime of being invisible. That was the day I stopped hoping. But it wasn't the day the story began. No. That day came much earlier. And if you'll sit with me, I'll take you back to the years no one talks about. The kind where love had conditions, and recognition had a name. And it wasn't mine. My name is Isla. I'm the oldest. Just 2 years older than Caleb, but it might as well have been a decade the way my parents treated us. He was the miracle. I was the extra. Everything in our house bent around him. Birthdays, arguments, even meal portions. He cried. The world paused. I cried. My mom would sigh and ask if I was starting that teenage attitude again. When I was 8, I gave my mom a crayon drawing for Christmas. She glanced at it, smiled weakly, and tucked it behind the fridge. Caleb handed her a glitter-covered Hallmark card he didn't even write, and she framed it, hung it in the living room. When he turned 16, he got a brand new Honda Civic with a bow the size of my disappointment. When I had turned 16, I got a used bus pass. No need for a car, Isla, my mom said. You're good at saving. Be practical. I worked a summer job at a dusty bakery to buy my own sneakers. Caleb failed a math quiz and got taken to a steakhouse to lift his spirits. But I didn't complain, because back then, I still believed that being strong meant staying quiet. I thought if I just kept doing well, if I just smiled through it all, they'd see me. Spoiler, they didn't. Fast forward to college, I got into a community college on a scholarship I applied for myself. Did the paperwork, the interviews, everything. No party, no celebration, no banner. Just my dad saying, "That's good, just don't pick something useless." Caleb got into a private university that cost more than our house. They threw a barbecue, hung streamers across the backyard, and called him the future of the family. I watched from the corner, sipping lukewarm soda, wondering when I had stopped being part of the story. And then came the graduation. His, not mine. Italian restaurant, DJ Flowers. A multi-tier cake with his school crest. 80 people, a photographer. I stood by the coat rack, smiling like a paid extra. And then, the key, the house, the applause. The sentence that broke something inside me. You deserve this, Caleb. You are the future of our family. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just swallowed it. The next year, when I graduated, no party. Just a dinner at a diner next to a gas station. Sticky table. Cold pasta. My mom slid me an envelope. Special gift, she chirped. I opened it. A $2 scratch-off lottery ticket. Purple. With a cartoon bear and the phrase, "Everyone's a winner." I forced a laugh. Said thank you. Ate my microwaved lasagna in silence. That ticket sat on my desk for weeks, untouched. Like it was mocking me every time I looked at it. Until one night, after a 12-hour shift washing dishes, I picked it up. Not because I thought I'd win, because I wanted to remind myself what I was worth to them. $2. I scratched it with a coin, one number, then another, then everything stopped. My hand started shaking. My heart? Pounding so loud it drowned out the hum of my tiny fridge. I opened my laptop, went to the official website, $134 million. I sat on the floor, not laughing, not crying, just hollow. Because you think a moment like that would feel like fireworks, but when you've spent your whole life being invisible, even your victory feels like it belongs to someone else. I didn't tell anyone, not a soul, because I knew what would happen if I did. They'd show up, smiling, warm, generous, asking about my life. Then the claws would come out. So I kept it to myself. And in that silence, I found clarity. This wasn't just money, this was a doorway. And this time, I wasn't asking for permission to walk through it. I was walking through it, alone. Quiet, rich, still invisible. The morning after I scratched that ticket, I woke up with the kind of headache that feels like you dreamed too loud. I didn't go to work, I just sat there, in that same crooked chair in my tiny studio apartment, staring at the winning numbers. Like if I blinked too fast, they'd vanish. I didn't feel rich. I felt terrified. So I did the only thing that made sense. I started Googling what to do when you win the lottery, how to stay anonymous after jackpot, winners who lost everything. And just like that, I learned the rule no one tells you. It's not the money that ruins you, it's the people who come for it. I called a lawyer, then a financial advisor, then another lawyer, one who specialized in asset protection. Her name was Caroline Winters, mid-50s, steel gray blazer, voice like a lock clicking shut. She looked me over, hoodie, jeans, hands still dry from dish soap, and said, "Rule 1, don't tell anyone." I nodded. "Rule 2, she added, we create a legal buffer, an LLC. That's who'll claim the ticket." 3 weeks later, I was holding paperwork that officially transferred $82 million, post-tax, into an anonymous entity I now controlled. No press, no news story, no giant check, just silence and a fresh set of keys. I didn't quit my job right away. I needed time. I needed space. I needed to breathe without my family sniffing out a change in the wind. So I kept washing dishes, kept catching the 6 a.m. bus, kept eating instant noodles in a room that smelled like old rain and cracked paint. But behind the scenes, I moved. I paid off my student loans, cleared all my debt. Then I visited the elderly woman who ran the restaurant where I worked nights, Mrs. Linda. I hugged her tight and left a sealed envelope on her desk. Inside, a check for $5,000. She cried. I didn't. Not because I wasn't emotional, I just didn't have the space for tears. Not yet. I bought a used silver Tesla. Not flashy, not loud. Just quiet, safe, and mine. Drove it to my old marketing job the next day. Parked in the same spot I always did. When coworkers asked about the car, I smiled and said, "Took a while, but I finally saved up." They nodded. No one suspected a thing, because no one ever saw me to begin with. Then came the house, not a mansion, not some glass-walled ego trap, just a small villa tucked outside a sleepy town near Manchester, New Hampshire. Big windows, black stone counters, a reading nook, a hammock, and silence. The kind of silence you only hear when no one's asking anything of you. I moved in without fanfare. I didn't tell my parents, didn't text Caleb. As far as they knew, I still lived in that rundown apartment with mold on the ceiling and a broken heater. And honestly, I liked it that way. Meanwhile, Caleb kept posting his life online like a highlight reel. Morning lattes, golf selfies, beach photos with his fiancée, some blonde girl with teeth too white and captions too long. Every post? "Proud of you, son. Our golden boy. Love you forever." Underneath? "Mom, Dad," commenting like their keyboard was a shrine. And me? Not even a mention. It hurt, yes. But in a dull, predictable way. Like pressing on an old bruise you've already memorized. Months passed. I started building a new life, piece by quiet piece. Caroline helped me invest, real estate in Vermont. Some blue chip stocks. A few small businesses that needed backing. I didn't go wild. I went smart. Because I wasn't rich in the way people think. I was free. And I was keeping it that way. Then, one night, just past 1 a.m., I got home from a walk, tossed my keys on the table, opened the fridge, and heard my phone buzz. Mom. I stared at the screen like it had teeth. She hadn't called in months. No happy birthday. No how are you. Not even a guilt text. Now suddenly, "Ivy, honey. It's been so long. Can we talk?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because I already knew what was happening. Someone had seen me. Someone had talked. And now, the scent of money was in the air. They were coming. Sunday evening. I drove to my parents' house. Not in the Tesla, in a rental car I picked just for that night. Faded blue, slight dent on the side, camouflage. I pulled into the driveway like I had hundreds of times before. Nothing had changed. Same broken porch light, same chipped paint, same doormat that still said home sweet home, even though it hadn't been for me in years. Inside, smiles, big ones, too big. My dad patted my shoulder 3 times like he'd rehearsed it. My mom pulled me in too long, her perfume sharp, like citrus and desperation. Caleb was there, sitting smug on the couch, fiance beside him, still blonde, still bored looking. Ivy, you look so healthy, she said with a thin smile. Still surviving, I replied, sipping my water. Dinner was awkward. Roast beef, overcooked, wine in glasses that hadn't been used since Caleb's engagement party. Then came dessert, apple pie. My mom tapped her glass. Ivy, she began, voice trembling like she was about to perform. There's something we want to ask. And just like that, there it was. The ask. The real reason I was invited. Caleb leaned forward. Emma adjusted her blouse. My dad cleared his throat. We're expanding the house, Mom said softly. You know, for Caleb and Emma's future. A new living room, a bigger backyard. Then she smiled. And we were hoping, if you're doing okay, maybe you could help. I paused. Set my fork down. How much? Caleb slid a folder across the table like he was closing a business deal. $100,000. I looked at the number, then looked up, and smiled. A cold, quiet smile. Let me ask you something, I said. Do you remember what you gave me for my graduation? Silence. My mom blinked. A scratch-off ticket, I answered for her. $2. Purple. With a cartoon bear. More silence. And now you want 100 grand. For a backyard. My dad shifted in his seat. Caleb started to say something, but I held up a hand. No. One word. Soft. But final. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and for the first time in my life, I didn't explain myself, didn't justify, didn't plead for them to understand. I just left. Because I finally did. The boundary I thought the story would end at no, that they'd hear it, feel it, back off. But I should have known better. People don't let go of what they think they still own. 2 days after that dinner, the text started. Mom, Ivy, we didn't mean to upset you. It was just a suggestion. Dad, we raised you. Don't forget that. Caleb, seriously? After everything we've done for you? That one made me laugh, not out of amusement, out of disbelief. Because the people who give you the least always remember it as the most. The following Sunday, I didn't go back, didn't answer calls, didn't respond to the group chat. Instead, I sat on my back porch, wrapped in a sweater, sipping coffee while the sun slid over my new lawn like honey. They didn't deserve access to this part of me. Not anymore. I thought that was the end. But then, the envelope arrived, handwritten. My mom's cursive, still neat after all these years. Inside, a breakdown of renovation costs, paint swatches, vendor lists, even a note that said, "We're asking because we trust you." And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. Which, honestly, was worse. Because indifference means something died and stayed dead. I didn't write back, not directly. Instead, I wrote something for myself, a letter I'd never send, but needed to write. Dear Mom, do you remember when I was 8 and I drew a picture of our family with crayons? I gave it to you on Christmas morning. You said it was cute, then slid it behind the fridge. Caleb gave you a $3 store-bought card. You framed it. That's when I knew. You saw him. Not me. You say you sacrificed for me. But I was the one taking the bus, saving tips, choosing ramen over rent. I was the one clapping for Caleb while you forgot to say happy birthday to me. Now that you think I have money, suddenly you remember my name. Suddenly you trust me. But here's what I know now. Love doesn't demand receipts, and family doesn't knock only when it needs help. I'm not angry. I'm just done. I folded it, lit a match, watched it curl into smoke, and it felt like something inside me, something tight and tired, finally exhaled. The next step wasn't dramatic. I just started closing doors, blocked my mom's number, then my dad's. then Caleb's. One by one, like cutting cords that had frayed long ago. There were no tears, just peace, the kind you don't notice at first. It settles in slow, quiet, like dust. And when you realize it's there, you wonder how you ever lived without it. The first few days were strange. My phone, once a trap full of guilt, sat silent. No questions, no passive aggressive messages. No reminders of everything I was supposed to give and never ask for. Just quiet. I walked in the woods behind my house, read books without checking my notifications, ate dinner without defending my choices, and little by little, I came back to myself. The version of me that wasn't shaped by expectations or silence. Just Isla. No titles, no roles. Just a woman with a bank account no one knew about, and a spine she'd finally decided to use. But peace, as it turns out, threatens people. Because when you stop playing your part, the show falls apart. One afternoon, a family friend messaged me out of the blue. Your mom's worried sick. You know she loves you, right? Another sent a photo of Caleb holding a baby shower invitation. Look who's about to be a dad! You coming? I stared at the message. Not out of sadness. Out of clarity. They were already writing the next chapter without me. And that was okay. I wasn't a background character anymore. I wasn't showing up to play supporting daughter. I had stepped off the stage. And I wasn't coming back. The last straw? A letter from Caleb, mailed. Signed. Inside was a contract. An actual legal draft asking me to consider a family loan. $100,000 to help with future generational equity. Like I was an ATM with a pulse. The envelope also included a guilt note from my mom. Don't forget who changed your diapers, who stayed up when you were sick. Family is forever, Ivy. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I laughed. Laughed so hard I cried. Because they still didn't get it. They thought this was about money. It never was. It was about dignity. Mine. And I wasn't giving it up. Not for a backyard. Not for a wedding. Not for any version of family that only shows up when there's something to take. So I did something radical. I told the truth, to myself, that I didn't need them anymore. Not their permission. Not their applause. Not even their approval. And with that truth, I carved out a space in the world that was mine. One no one could shrink me in. Not anymore. What I built instead. After the letters. After the calls stopped. After the silence finally became real. I thought I'd feel empty. Like I'd carved out so much of my life there'd be nothing left but echoes. But I didn't. I felt light. Strangely light. Like I'd been carrying bags I didn't even know were mine, and I'd finally put them down. And in their place, space. So much space I didn't know what to do with it at first. I started slow. I made breakfast. The kind you actually sit down to eat. With eggs that didn't come from a plastic tray and coffee that didn't taste like burnt pennies. I repainted the reading room. A soft shade of green. Hung plants from the ceiling. Built shelves with my own hands. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I started going to the library again. Not just to check out books, but to remember who I was before all the noise. Before Caleb. Before the scratch-off ticket. Before the world told me I was only useful if I gave and stayed quiet. I found her again. The girl who loved silence. Who took long walks and scribbled poems on napkins. She was still there. Just buried under years of neglect. And now, she had sunlight. I didn't buy a mansion. Didn't get a new face, new car, or fly off to Bali like a dramatic Netflix heroine. I stayed right here. In my quiet house. In my quiet town. I upgraded slowly. Better food, better mattress, better books. I added warmth, not spectacle. Because I wasn't rebuilding my ego. I was rebuilding trust. With myself. I set up a small scholarship fund in town. No big announcement, no photo ops, just a quiet email to the local college, for students like I was. The ones who do it alone. A few months later, they sent me a list of names. One of them was a girl named Lila, studying sociology, first in her family to go to college, working 2 jobs, straight A's. I smiled when I read her story. Because I knew that girl. I'd been her. I still got updates about Caleb. Not directly. Just the small-town whispers that float around like wind through a cracked window. He was having money problems. His fiancée, Emma, had racked up credit card debt. My parents, they stepped in again. Mom cashed in her savings. Dad sold his old pickup, the one he swore he'd be buried in. Still playing the same game. Still choosing Caleb as the center of the universe no matter how much it cost. And me? I just watched. Like someone watching an old movie on mute. Same characters, same script. But this time, I wasn't in the cast. One afternoon, I ran into Caleb. By accident. I had just finished a client meeting at a quiet cafe in town, wearing my usual jeans, clean blouse, no labels. As I stepped out, he was crossing the street, paper bag in hand, shirt wrinkled, face a little thinner than I remembered. He saw me first. Ivy? I paused, tilted my head slightly. Caleb. He walked over, forcing a smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Wow, you look different. Like successful. I shrugged. Time changes people. He glanced at my car. The Tesla parked a few feet away. I could see the math happening in his head. I heard things, he said. You won, didn't you? The lottery? There it was. The ask, hiding behind a statement. I didn't flinch. I just smiled. Yeah, I did. A pause. Then him, laughing, but not the kind of laugh that comes from joy. Man, some people have all the luck. I looked at him. Really looked. And then said, softly, that ticket? That was luck. But what came after? The quiet. The work. The boundaries. That was me. He blinked. Didn't know what to say. So I stepped past him. But before I got to the car, I turned around. Caleb? He looked up, hopeful. If I had given you that ticket back then, you would have burned it. His mouth opened, then closed. I got in the car and drove away. And this time, I didn't even glance in the rear view. That night, I lay in the hammock out back. The stars were out. The wind was soft. No one was calling. No one was demanding. No one was guilting. Just me. And the sound of the trees. And a quiet so deep it felt like being held. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a daughter, or a disappointment, or a shadow. I felt like a person, whole, unapologetic, mine. I chose me. I used to think the hardest part would be walking away. But it wasn't. The hardest part was staying gone. Even when the silence grew heavy. Even when holidays came and no one said my name. Even when I wondered, late at night, if I was just being stubborn or if I'd truly done the right thing. But every time that doubt crept in, I came back to the same truth. They only remembered me when I had something to give. And I wasn't going to live my life on loan anymore. I never went back. Not for birthdays. Not for Thanksgiving. Not for the wedding Caleb eventually had in a backyard that I didn't help pay for. I wasn't angry anymore. Just uninterested. That was the difference. Anger still ties you to someone, keeps you spinning in their orbit. But disinterest? That's freedom. I focused on the life I was building. My investments grew, quiet, steady. I traveled a little. Visited Napa in the fall. Tasted wine on a hillside where the sun turned everything gold. Spent a week in Charleston. Ate pastries from a bakery that smelled like warm sugar and old stories. I even tried skiing in Colorado and fell so hard I saw stars. But I laughed. Because no one was watching. No one expected me to be strong, to perform, to carry the family's pride on my back like I used to. I was just me. Free to fail, free to laugh, free to be. Back home, I upgraded the house. Added a skylight to the reading room. Put in a small garden. Hung wind chimes that sang every time the breeze passed. It wasn't luxurious. It was mine. A life stitched together with care, not noise. One afternoon, I got an invitation. Not from family. From the local community college, the one I'd attended years ago on a scholarship no one clapped for. They asked if I'd speak at orientation. Just a few minutes. I almost said no. But something inside me whispered, it's time. The auditorium smelled like old carpet and cheap hope. Students sat in plastic chairs. Some looked tired. Some looked lost. I walked to the front. No slides, no script. Just me. I looked at them the way I used to look at myself. And said, you don't have to prove your worth to people who only see what they can take from you, even if they're family. A pause, a shift. Some hands clenched, some eyes glassed over. So I kept going. If they only show up when you're useful, they were never showing up for you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is leave the door closed. No fancy ending, no big speech, just truth. And when I stepped down, they clapped. Not because I was rich, but because they recognized something themselves. That night, I sat on the back deck with a mug of tea. The air smelled like pine and peace. My phone sat face down beside me. Silent, no texts from Mom, no voicemails from Dad, no guilt-laced messages from Caleb. And still, I was whole. I didn't need closure. I didn't need an apology. I didn't even need to be remembered. Because I was no longer waiting to be invited into a family that never made space for me. I'd built my own table. People think winning the lottery was the twist. It wasn't. The twist was realizing I didn't owe anyone my silence, my loyalty, or my savings. Just because we shared DNA blood may run deep. But peace runs deeper. And when I dropped that old coin, the one I'd used to scratch the ticket, into the lake behind my house, I watched the ripples stretch out, not as an ending, but as a beginning. Because every story has a breaking point, and every soul has a limit. And mine had finally been met. Now, I wake up to birdsong, not alarms. I pour my coffee slow. I answer only to myself. And when someone asks, "Do you speak to your family?" I just smile. We each have our path. I'm walking mine, not out of spite, out of grace. Because I used to be Isla, the invisible daughter. Now, I'm Isla, whole, untangled, unapologetically my own. And that's worth more than any jackpot in the world.